Hello everyone, William here. I just had another great conversation with another guest. Would you like to come in and listen in on the conversation we had? By the way, feel free to share it with anyone you feel may find it of interest. Come on, let's go listen in now. Tim Simmons, welcome back to my studio.
Thanks, Bill. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks so much for reaching out and coming back in.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yes. Today we wanted to talk a little bit about business. In the beginning with Contagious Conversation, I had some dialogues with people about their business and how they got into business and how they overcame adversity and how they celebrate the good times. And I just wanted to ask you yourself, because I know that you're a businessman and your wife's in business, what got you started and how do you manage all the variables in those kind of...
Well, I sort of fell into it. Never originally saw myself as a small business person. When I was younger, after university, I traveled to Europe a fair bit and did the backpacking thing a number of times. And it was, I guess, mid-90s where I came back, and my dad had started a wedding chapel in Hess Village back in 1980. And, you know, as kids, we would help him out and, you know, clean it, or, you know, and later on he used to help book weddings and that. So I had some familiarity with it. Well, I came back from Europe, this would have been mid-90s now, and I didn't really know where I was going to go from there. So I said to my dad, I'll help you out this summer. He said, sure. And after that, I never left. I really enjoyed the small business sort of concept. I think small business is the backbone of our economy. It really is, even though, you know, the big players get all of the kudos, you might say, in society, the big CEOs and that. But it's really the small business person, the person who's willing to risk their own capital in order to make a living for themselves and provide sometimes livings for other people. With people you help, and you become part of the fabric of the community. So it's, you know, my dad taught me sort of from the bottom up to how to run a business. So that's sort of how I learned the ropes, and sort of I was ready to do so by, I guess, the late 90s. He said, okay, you're running the show now, I'm going home. If you have any questions, give me a call. Wow. And I remember the first couple of weeks I'd call him, you know, every hour, what do I do about that and this, and soon it, you know, he was smart, just sort of throwing me in there, knowing that I had a lifeline to pick up the phone, and I found sort of being my own boss, although it comes with certain pressures and responsibilities and stresses, it was nothing like having a job that you love and then a boss that you don't like, somebody who comes in who's very negative, doesn't work well with people, and you quickly realize that your enjoyment of that job, whatever work that would have been, and I've done a lot of different things in my life, the actual work had nothing to do with it. It was the people that you're with. It was the boss. It was that environment that makes it. So, you know, with the people that work for me, you know, I've often heard you're the best boss ever. And because I know what it's like to have a bad boss.
Sure, and you remember what it's like to have a bad boss. Everybody knows what it's like, but oftentimes people won't practice that.
That's right.
You know, oftentimes bosses come in, if they're working for another company and you happen to be an employee,
yeah,
they'll bring in their own personal agenda, and which overrides even a good company's credo.
Yes.
Which can be damaging, and I think everybody's probably experienced that somewhere.
Well, definitely, and you have to change. All businesses have to change over time. You know, you're always in a constant state of flux because of what the economy is doing, especially when you're a small business in sort of in a global environment of business. You know, if Greece defaults, wait 6 months, it's going to affect you in some way. So I've always found it important to have my employees part of the decision making, so that they feel some ownership. Now, it's not the kind of business where I can have full-time employees because it's a seasonal business in the wedding business, and we've moved it into the business name is Heritage Weddings and Coordinators. So we're doing more event planning, we've broken out sort of where we start. My dad started in Hess Village to now doing weddings at historical sites like Dundurn Castle and Battlefield, Whitehorn, Osler House in Dundas, and as well as people's homes. We have a little chapel at our Main Street office now, and since we're no longer in Hess Village.
Do you do the service as well?
No.
So you're not an officiant?
No, I'm not an officiant.
Okay.
So, but I have them come in and they do them for me, which is terrific. And I hire any coordinators. I tend to hire out of Mohawk College. It's sort of their first job. I get them out of the event planning course out of there, and they know I can't hire them full time, and I know it's their first job, and they come with all sorts of skills out of there. Mohawk is terrific. What they teach them, so many skills that I used to have to hire out for, I can now bring in house. They have all that technology, and you get people with the right personality, the outgoing personality, people that are good with working with people. And I tell them, you're not going to be here forever. You might be here 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3. And I know that because you're going to go on to something bigger and better. But I'm giving you your start here. And I say to them, when you're out looking for another job, just let me know. I'll give you time for an interview. I'll give you a reference, whatever you like, but just let me plan, because I'm a small business owner and I have to plan for the shifts. So
just being transparent with them, and
yes.
hoping they'll be transparent
That's
with you.
And that generally is the case, and it works well because it's a two-way street, right? And when bosses or employers don't understand that, and employees don't understand that, you get a lot of knocking like this. It's not a adversarial position. You need to work together.
It's them and us kind of versus them versus us.
Yeah.
And it's more of a we culture, right? It's
Yes.
like, I have something to offer you. I've got some fresh information you don't have. I'll give you all that I have if you'll give me all the experience that you have over the years. So it's a great trade-off.
Yeah.
It is even. It's not like someone needs to get a receipt
That's right.
for the gift
Yes.
of sharing that kind of information, because it's beneficial mutually.
That's right. It's great having a business in Hamilton. Hamiltonians I think are a breed of their own in some ways, where I guess being in Hamiltonian, I can communicate well with them, and they communicate well with me. Our expectations tend to be the same. In the wedding business, you want to make sure that they trust you, of course, because you're doing something that's very important, a very important aspect of their life, to make sure that it's done the way they want it done. And from my side of it, I can talk to them about, how do you enjoy a wedding? How do you enjoy the process of planning a wedding? Because really, at the end of the day, it's all up here in your head. If you're going to enjoy something with anything we do, it's about your attitude. So it's about keeping positive attitudes, making sure the negative influences don't overshadow those. And in the end, it'll be successful, because I say, if you break a heel on your way down the aisle, take off the other shoe and throw it at Uncle Bill and keep going.
For sure. Well, I understand there are business improvement associations throughout the city. There's one for Barton Street, there's one for Ottawa Street. There's all these associations which help to streamline the process at City Hall when you're trying to get licensing and you're trying to get renovations done, etc. And communicating that effectively helps to streamline things. I know people have come up against things and then backed off, which is not really an entrepreneurial spirit to begin with.
Well, it's scary when you're trying to open up a business, and I know because my wife opened up her own hair salon downtown 4 years ago, and so this was going to be a brand new business, and as opposed to my own business, which was older and more established. So I remember, we had a little bundle of money to invest, right? This was going to be our bundle of money here, and we're going to get it up and running. Well, so we were looking for the site. We found the site, the right area, and then we go over to the city, find about licensing and finding out what we need to do. And all of a sudden, it was sort of, as nice as people were there, it was kind of like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, and it's like, show me how, right? So, part of the problem was, okay, so you're having a hair salon. Is it zoned for a hair salon? What kind of plumbing needs to be done? And then we find out you need engineers and you need all this kind of stuff. And we're going like, well, we have this chunk of money, we need to get up and running, and how long is this going to take? And how much is it going to cost? And it's very different than, if you're like a mom and pop, or, a very small business, fledgling, to get up and running as fast as you can. I think where we need to go, and if I can move this back to my candidacy for Ward 3 councillor, is that I think the city, in many areas, but especially with small business, needs to become a facilitator. It's one thing sort of to have the process and somebody to answer your questions, but it's another thing to have somebody to take you by the hand and say, come with me, and we're going to get this done. And there's many ways we could do it, and I think in many ways with my wife's business I proved that it could be done because I guess I have the gift of the gab, and I could get myself behind the counter at City Hall. I could I could get past sort of the counter person and talk to the manager person, and you know, and there's a lot of smart people over there. They know what they're doing. It's just that sometimes there's a disconnect with trying to get people moving from one point to the next. So, you know, he sat down with my wife and I, and we talked about what we were trying to do, and he said, okay, well, let's go up and see the engineering department. And we're going, oh, there's an engineering department. Okay, great. So he took us, we went upstairs to the engineers, and he explained to them what we were trying to do, and they said, okay, and you need to go do this, you need to go that, this is how you try and do that, ask your landlord this, and he said, and then come back to us. Okay, all right, we'll go do that. So we went and did that, and talked to the landlord about what needed to be done, who was responsible, because apparently there's all sorts of, you know, fire code things, a lot of things that people don't know they need to do when they embark on these adventures. And so we did all that. We went back. We got things going in under 3 months this way, and it took, the one thing it did was it gave us relief, right? That we could do this. We knew we had somebody at City Hall on our side, and he was going to see us through to the end of this process, as opposed to City Hall being that blank face, that sort of roadblock. And I think we could, you know, I would want to look into the fact that why can't City Hall provide engineers to do drawings for small business people? And I'm not talking about the big companies necessarily, because they have the resources, they have their own engineers that can do all this. But for the little guy, at cost, provide engineers to do that. It was just one pipe. That was the one thing standing in the way of us opening, is getting this pipe and do a drawing and having it stamped. And you know, that can be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And if you've got a small pot of money, and you know, let's say a quarter of that's going to go to engineers and engineering, it's going to, you know, a lot of people are going to back away from that, and the city badly needs new businesses, it needs new jobs if it's going to put itself on a sustainable footing, and take some of the pressure off the homeowners' property tax and the business taxes, because if you compare that to what's going on around Hamilton and the other communities, it's not that competitive there, and we all need to pay our taxes because that's how you create a civil society. But we don't want it. We want to make sure that if we've got more people paying into taxes, then it's less of a burden for the rest of us. So, and as our population gets older in Hamilton, over the next 10 years, we're going to need to support more and more people. And so there is a real push on right now, I know, at City Hall to bring more jobs here. And I think, you know, we certainly want the big jobs coming in, the big companies coming in here, but and we want the good paying jobs that will feed families. But I think also the backbone of our economy is the small business. Sure.
Well, the small business, if you have a lot of pockets of small business, if one goes, it doesn't really affect the large.
That's right.
But if you have a large company and it goes, now all of a sudden there's thousands of people out of work. So,
that's right. And that trickles down to the small business, right? So we need good paying jobs in this city. We have a lot of highways. I'd like to see, you know, people coming in, driving into Hamilton, not driving out of Hamilton for their work. And I'm sure a lot of Hamiltonians would love to get off that highway and stay in Hamilton and work if they could as well too. So I think the city needs to look at, and I'm sure they have to some degree, but you need some guiding principles and some strategic directions around how do we do that in our cities. And a lot of that may have to do with zoning. You know, Ward 3 in and of itself has a lot of potential for new businesses. And when I say potential, I don't mean as in buildings and roads, I mean people potential, where people can try to start up a neighborhood job, whether it's getting Barton Street back on its feet, or I know there's been some difficulties along Cannon Street for people to open up jobs there, and I think the city needs to look at if you're going to have a modern transportation system that has bikes, buses, walkability, and cars. Sometimes in these smaller neighborhoods where people can bike and bus and walk to, you don't need to worry about having a parking lot for your business, right? And sometimes that impedes business growth as well within our little communities.
I would tend to agree with you on that, especially demographically. When you look at a map, Hamilton is this hub with highways going everywhere. The arteries go everywhere. You're not far from the border. I remember living in St. Catharines and having someone say to me, St. Catharines is close to nothing. You have to travel 30 miles to get to a point where you can start going somewhere, which I don't necessarily know whether it's true or not, but there's a lot to be said for that area as well in the Niagara Peninsula. But this city being such a hub, it's so close to Toronto, it's close, not far from London. I mean, you're on your way very quickly anywhere from any spot in the city as far as getting on a major highway and going somewhere. So being able to draw people who are used to paying crazy mortgage prices in Toronto, et cetera, and coming to this community, including Grimsby, and bringing everything a little bit closer. It's a great place to start. This city has so much potential in the future.
Yeah, and like you said, you know, we've paid a lot of attention to those arteries, but inside the city, how easy is it to get around, right? And that needs to be part of the economic model for the city as well, to the business model. Can you take a bus in the morning from Ancaster and get downtown to your job? Or vice versa? Can you go from Stony Creek to Dundas, you know, in a reasonable amount of time to get to your job, you know, or your school, even better, and or can you bike safely right to your job? I live about depending on how fast I'm walking, between 20 and a 30-minute walk to my business from where I live, and I sometimes walk, and what I find is walking down Main Street, you go deaf, right? You know, you want a nice peaceful walk. Now you can go past Main Street, but if you slow the traffic down a little bit, it would be a very walkable commute to work. And I think you know, the idea around traffic calming is also important economically. I have a business downtown. Most people that come and see me either drive or they take the bus. If they're taking the bus, it takes them a long time. If they're coming from the mountain or from the east end or the west end. If they're driving, then they got to find parking. Some people do walk if they're working downtown and they come over and see me. But if a transit strategy is also an economics and social strategy as well. If people can ride their bikes to my business, that's good for my business because they'll come. So if they can come safely, I wouldn't ride down King Street or Main Street on a bicycle. I see people doing it, and it scares me for them. I ride a motorcycle, and it scares me to see them on that road. So if you know, there's different ways you can calm traffic and provide more diversity in transportation. With stoplights, you know, we have the timed lights to about 55K, you know, going down Main. You know, you could probably also lower that a bit with the timing to a 45-50. That creates the noise, lowers the noise level down. You you see a lot of, and I don't know how well this is thought out on the whole with the city, but you see a lot of one-way streets being converted to two-way. And that's one way to effectively calm traffic, but it can also create gridlock, and you don't want that. It also means you're throwing out bus lanes and you're throwing out bike lanes, at least effective ones. I was in Vancouver last July and I saw the bike lanes they have out there, phenomenal. Stoplights for the bikes, and I didn't see any gridlock while I was there at all. It's not that you would have, you want these to be across the board to some degree, but it needs to be carefully planned out.
Sure, and the model's there. Obviously, you were saying Vancouver, so the model's there to examine and take a look at. Take
a look at it and look for, these aren't new concepts. They're being done all over the world, and I know the city's been looking at them, and it's just, you need to find the right sort of process, or what fits for Hamilton's demographic, for its topography. That's another, it makes it complicated for Hamilton. I know there's, I've heard the idea of, around gondolas, even bringing, gondolas down the mountain, up the mountain, and that's something that's done in Europe. So there's, like we saw with the school board, like I've seen with my experience with the school board, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. You just need to go find those best practices and see what works, but then do a comprehensive, a systematic change.
Sure.
Because if you're going to change streets to two-way, before doing that, you might need to change them back at some point.
Right.
So let's get a master plan. Look where you're going to zone businesses, how are you going to support those businesses with transit or with LRT. Look at how you're going to set up your neighborhoods, your homes, and again, you want a mix of small business, usually in the neighborhood, a mix of single, probably the majority of single family homes. You want it, you'll have you'll have some apartments and some rentals, depending on where, but it needs to be balanced out for our communities. I think in Ward 3 we have a lot of rental units, a lot of single family homes that have become duplexed, and I think for the time being we need to probably put a moratorium in the ward on that and look at what we've got happening there. Look at how the properties are being managed, and ensuring that we have livable neighborhoods, right? And like I said, it needs to be diverse. In other areas, you need to do the opposite. There are areas where you don't have a lot of diversity, and you don't have a lot of you maybe don't even have a lot of diversity in business either, and those kinds of things need to happen as well out there too, so that you have affordable housing all over your city, and you have walkable communities to small business and easy ways of getting to work.
Yeah, well, below the mountain here, there's seems to be a lot of combination properties, living facility, and businesses. Especially Barton Street, your Cannon Street.
They're ideal for that kind of a combination. That sort of, you've got the business downstairs and you've got the rental units upstairs. It's great. It's good because you've got clients all living along that street, because for a business you want to be in an area where people are living. That's
it's a bit of a village environment.
That's right.
When you have that kind of Locke Street has come up. It's very much like a village. Hess is very much like a village. Cannon Street and your Ottawa streets are starting to become villages. We got Kenilworth that can become a village again.
It's probably somewhere in that's the answer to Barton Street as well too. If I'm successful to getting on city council, we'll need to look at sort of the zoning. Sometimes your zoning laws cause the situation, right?
Be prohibitive.
Yeah, to develop, and I think we probably need to be a little more flexible in certain zoning laws in one part of the city may not fit another part of the city, and vice versa. And so we need to look at the individual needs of those communities and reflect those zoning laws so that we can encourage where there needs to be development. Encourage that. So.
Well, it's going to be interesting in the future to see the development of small business in this area, because I really do think if we can educate the people on the big mystery of business and being in business not being that mysterious, and if City Hall can merge with streamlining it and making it more comfortable to educate people and have a process, maybe even just something on a website that explains how things are in a process that you need to go through. So you have obviously you've built relationships in your business, and you didn't allow anyone at City Hall not to allow you to build a relationship with the people who could get you what you needed. And so building those relationships is key to anything that happens in any community.
Even like you said with the website, if you have sort of a basic structure there, and then call us or come see us, or it maybe you need a small business ambassador. So somebody who sort of becomes your buddy from City Hall, where if you've got an issue or a problem, you call up and say, Jim, for engineers.
Oh, he'd be a busy man.
Yeah, yes, he would be.
Or she.
Or she. And you could also maybe utilize McMaster University students with the engineering side. We're certainly not short of engineers, I think, in this city, where
be a great internship, right?
Yeah, interns at City Hall, a good job experience, where you can come in, and again, it's for the small business person, right? It's the people of limited means that want to sort of risk that savings they have, put it in, and help create something for their community that's going to make their community more vibrant and create jobs, and when you're doing that, it's certainly good for everybody. And
that's great.
Because we definitely need more jobs in this city.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation with you, being able to mix the business with your political objectives as well, and how they can help the city. Wow. And if you would, I'd love for you to just let us know again the name of your business.
Sure, it's Heritage Weddings and Coordinators, and my wife has the Asiana Hair Salon, and we're both down at downtown in the Landmark building, which people used to know as Century 21. Yes, so no, it's great to work downtown. We love being downtown. We love what we've seen, the changes downtown. It's you can, in the summertime, you can go over to Gore Park and have your lunch there.
Sure.
And they have the food trucks, and there's games. You always see the mounted police down there. So yeah, I think Hamilton is definitely turning itself in the right direction, and but there's still a lot more to be done, and to get the potential of people where it wants to go.
Yeah, very good. Well, thanks again, Tim.
Bill.
And I enjoy chatting with you, and I hope we have an opportunity to have another conversation.
I'd like to do that. Yeah, I'd love to do that. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Join us.